What is this? Claire, what is this? It's her flip-flop. Yeah, because her dad, who's wrapping us up, said, are you bringing the flip-flops? I said, no, I'm out for 3 weeks and could not jam it in the bag. And so Claire said, well, you can use mine. So let's start off for real. This is truly a real flip-flop. Tell me about it. What is another name for flip-flop that your relatives use? My father is 86 years old, and he does not call these flip-flops. He doesn't call them sandals. He calls them thongs, which illustrates that when you were raised determines how you look at the world. It is an awkward family moment when you explain to your father an update on the meaning of thong. Shrek Dad, Pinocchio, Whale Tail, what? No, it's just kind of an awkward thing because we don't use words the same way. What else does this represent? It represents that Claire's got it going on. I said, Claire, you got flip-flops, but they got bling. She said, yes, both comfortable and stylish, right? So I was at State Farm because they're like a good neighbor. I was at State Farm, and I said, in 7 years, flip-flops will be formal business wear, and one of their executives started shaking her head. And I said to her, are you thinking over my dead body? What she said, yes. I said, well, actuarially speaking, that's exactly how it will happen. Enough people who don't think flip-flops are formal business wear will leave the workplace or leave the planet, and then enough people who like them will begin to wear them. And we will... both comfortable and stylish. Exactly. You and Claire are intergenerationally on the same page. It goes back, doesn't it, Dennis, to what you said. Look at that intergenerational connection. Yeah. And so what I think this is, I think it's just the end of the world as we know it. Because for my dad, it is a flip-flop, but for me, it didn't. You wore a thong, a flip-flop, to the beach, or you wore it camping so that your feet would not touch the same shower house floor that the people 2 campsites over touch, because you swear they have ringworm looking at all their family's feet, and so you didn't want your feet to touch the same shower house that you would buy them for a dime at a what store? And then you would throw them in a garbage barrel because it was basically a piece of insulation that had a strap on it. It wasn't footwear. It was in the great hierarchy of footwear, it was the lowest form of footwear. Today you can put like a glove on your toes. I think that may be lower than the flip-flop, but this was the lowest. You did not wear it to your wedding. And this, my friends, is a sticking point. A sticking point is anytime 2 generations answer the same question completely differently and then stare back at the other generation and go, what? I'd like all of us in the bridal party to have matching flip-flops. The father of the bride goes, not in a $2,700 designer dress, you're not. Look at that guy back there going, we learned in body language, this means ain't no way it's a $2,700 dress and a $7 pair of flip-flops from Old Navy that matches everybody else. To which she replies, I'm just going to kick them off and dance at the reception anyway, so why do I need fancy shoes that none of us will ever wear again? And you know what? It makes sense from both perspectives, does it not? Would you turn to the person next to you and would you talk about one of the curious things that you run into? Because sometimes sticking points are serious and sometimes generational sticking points are just funny. My friend's kid who couldn't roll down the window in a new cheap truck he bought. Dad, I'm hot. Well, roll the window down. And he's like, I don't see how. He goes, it's a lever. He was in 8th grade. He had never done a lever before to get a window down. Isn't that right? So you've all had stories of times that have just been funny. One of my favorites is the young men who brought their friends from a fraternity home for spring break to their grandmother's farm. They rode 4-wheelers. They messed around. Their grandmother loved them. She spoiled them. She cooked for them. And she said to them, I want to be in your text messaging groups. And they said, we are fraternity boys. We can be a bit crude. She said, I raised boys. I can live with crude. So they added her. Well, they were surprised that she, within 4 hours, was the most popular, most well-known person on that entire campus of 30,000. Because, well, one of her grandsons called her at lunch and said, "Grandma, everyone is talking about you in our entire university." And she said, "How's that possible?" He said, "Well, before we go any further, I just need to ask you, what do you think WTF means?" And she said, "Wasn't that funny?" He would say, "That explains so much of what you're responding to all morning in text messaging. Grandma, that doesn't quite what it means." And she felt like she had to turn in her Sunday school teaching card after they told her what it was about. We've all run into funny things that happen because we grew up in different times, have different language and different stuff. Would you please talk amongst yourselves? I really will just give you 2 minutes, because it is that time of the day, isn't it, when speakers will do anything for interactivity. Since you're good people, you're putting off the thought of Dallas traffic to stay with us till the end, and we love you. We love you. So would you please take 2 minutes and talk about a funny thing that you've run into that's generational? It's good every time. Now, stop right there. Stop right there. It may get a little quiet and a little awkward if I said, "Now share a story that wasn't just fun." Yeah, share a story that wasn't just fun. I was chatting somebody at lunch who said, in medical space, one of the challenges we have is that people who are younger, many people want to work from home, but often people who are younger have that as a reason why they stay or leave. And their organization's like, "No, we need to be here at the office." One big pharmaceutical company I worked with, they said, "We just got a lot of money to build this new building, and then people want to live downtown." You know what the people who live downtown say? They say, "Well, you need to recruit your friends. We can't find enough engineers." It's like, it's 3.5 hours to go to the Chicago suburbs and get back. They said, "Why don't you move out here?" "Because unless I'm going to strike a relationship up with a married woman in a grocery store, the suburbs are not where one finds lifetime love." You know why the people who lead that place have never thought of that? Because in their generation, you were in love and probably pretty serious by 21, 22, 24, 26, and you were like, "What's wrong with me?" Today, people don't even marry until 28, on average for males, 26 and a half for women, and that's not even in cities. Cities raise that again. I got to find love. Now, how does this apply in hospitals? I was at the hospital, and they're like, the brand new hired nurses, they want to leave. They want to take a long weekend. Memorial Day weekend, I want it. "You won't get a Memorial Day weekend for 20 years. Well, then I'm quitting. You can't quit. The older generations say, "You don't care about patients." No, I care about finding love, and you were already married with a kiddo at 25 and a mortgage, and I want to go with the people who are going away, and I can't because being a nurse and caring for people gets in the way of building a life. Now, it's nobody's fault that it was really different when they were the same stage and age in life. It's a generational difference. But it causes huge amounts of turnover and recruiting problems that make the bonus on nurses hard for some medical systems to cover and for all of us to have to pay more. Dennis is right. He really was right. The age stuff, the generational stuff doesn't matter if you can create a place of joy and caring and respect. The only challenge is sometimes there's a gap between what organizations are currently experiencing and that. And then each generation wants things a little differently, and that's where sticking points comes in. Yeah, Ritz-Carlton would teach people to say, "It's my pleasure." Millennial women were like, "Some creeper who works for the Ritz is following me around, memorizing my name, telling me it's my pleasure. My toilet stopped up. It's my pleasure to come up and unplug it. You're a creeper. Get away from my commode." And so the Ritz was losing younger generations. It became a place for people over 60 because younger generations thought it was wackadoodle. They had to change the way they train people based on those differences. So one of the challenges, though, is your meetings have heard stuff on millennials and generations for a decade, have you not? What I'm hearing are three things. I need something that's practical, or we're going to move on to another topic. Or what about Generation Z? Let me answer that one real fast. They're right now in university. They're not out in the workforce yet. They're in university, and they're coming, and there are some differences. And they're going to be wonderful. And they have higher levels of anxiety and depression, to go back to a conversation around mental illness earlier in the day. Maybe because we report more, or maybe because of what we eat or breathe, or maybe because, who knows? But it'll require a different way of working. There are higher levels of Asperger's spectrum, or autism spectrum, whatever you prefer to use. And so it is estimated that 25% of IT males are somewhere on the spectrum. If you don't learn to manage that, you don't have a workforce. And they crush it. They code 3 times as fast as the rest of us who look at our phones. They don't check their phones. They code, they don't get into conversations, many of them, and they code like crazy. They can be incredibly effective. It's just going to be a different world. Now, so I'm hearing people ask about that. So I wanted to handle that real fast. Gen Z, they're not in here yet, but they're coming. And then lastly, millennials don't even like the topic of millennials. But that's what all the older generations want to hear about. Matter of fact, I've been posting some things on LinkedIn called "Is Millennial the New M Word?" And so you do a session on multiple generations and then focus on millennials so that everybody's happy, right? And with those barriers to it, what people want to know is actually, what do you do differently? And so let me give you 3 ideas of what you do differently to cut your generational turnover in half, to deal with the sticking point of loyalty. We won't cover them all, but let's cover 3. The first and most important one is, the one I see work most often, is you have to engage them so that they don't leave. I'm at Northrop Grumman, and they said, one of our big problems is we just wait. We just wait, and we put them at the card table, and they have to wait 7 years before anybody invites them to the big table and asks their opinion. And we want them to watch us. Grasshopper. We need to watch us, learn from us. And by then, they're like, right? Well, Haydn, they can't run the place. They come in here wanting to run the place. No, the research shows they're not arrogant. They're involved. They want to help. They would love to catch somebody who's 40 years older on a trapeze if somebody asked. And guess what Pew Research Center discovered? They don't think they know everything. You know who they think knows most in an organization? Boomers. You know who they think knows second most in an organization? Xers. Do you know who they think knows the least amount of what to do in an organization? Other people of their life stage. Because they know at-bats matter, repetitions matter. But we see confidence, which we inbred in them. Look at a person in the eye, shake their hand, tell them that you don't like your food. You tell them, Mom, you tell them. Go call them back on the customer service line, and then when they show confidence, when they come into work, we say, hey, you need to sit down at this table, you need to keep your hands in the bus, or we're going to call your mom. Which is actually the last thing we need to do, is involve more parents into workplace issues with their children. Just saying. Number 2. Boredom is your problem. Boredom was not my problem. Boredom was not my grandmother's problem. Boredom was not my employer's problem. Growing up with a good Czechoslovakian, Bohemian grandmother who lived with us, we would say, I'm bored by July. How many of you have kiddos who are now saying, I'm bored? They couldn't wait for school to get out, and now they live in abject, go get in the pool. I've been in the pool. Can I have some friends over? No, we haven't arranged a play date. I'm bored. So now we have all kinds of things to deal with their boredom. Here's what my grandmother said to me when I said I was bored. Go outside and weed the garden. There was always an alternative that was nasty to replace boredom or figure something out. She would say to us, go outside and blow the stink off. To this day, I do not know what that means. How many of you heard that? Go outside and blow the stink off. I'm like, I'm 7. Boredom was not her problem. But guess what? You'll cut your generational turnover in half with the younger millennials if you'll make boredom your problem. I'm bored. Well, you have to stay here for 3 years playing the same level of the same video game forever and ever, because that's called a job. Well, I'm tired of level 3 of Paper Mario. Doesn't matter. You get paid to do it. We pay you because it's miserable. I don't know why you're considering turning over. Excuse me. Number 3 is Quit when your time is up. Thank you very much.